I never imagined the moment my world would shatter would smell like warm vanilla and sea salt. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in our old family house perched on the cliffs of a small coastal town in California. The ocean breeze slipped through the cracked window, carrying the faint cry of gulls. I stood in Brooke's childhood bedroom, heart beating a little faster than usual, searching desperately for my missing USB drive. That small black drive held every original recipe I had poured my soul into for the last 3 years. Without it, I couldn't finish the special orders for my pop-up bakery this weekend. My hands moved carefully at first, then more urgently, sliding across her cluttered desk past old photo frames, dried flowers, and half-used notebooks. I just needed my drive back. Nothing more. Then my fingers brushed against a sleek USB I had never seen before. The label, written in Brooke's neat, familiar handwriting, read, "Signature Collection, 2024. A strange tightness gripped my chest. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the drive for a long second. Something deep inside warned me not to open it. But the need to find my own files pushed me forward. I plugged it into my laptop. The folder opened slowly. 11 files appeared, one after another. My breath caught. There they were, all 11 of my signature recipes. The ones I had created alone in the quiet hours before dawn. The brown butter cardamom brioche that took me 6 long months of failed batches to perfect. The salted honey lavender sourdough I had cried over when the dough finally rose just right. The dark chocolate espresso tahini cookies that made customers drive hours just to taste them. Every single one of them. But they were no longer mine. The names had been changed. Measurements slightly adjusted. A few elegant words added here and there to make them sound more sophisticated, more professional. My hands began to tremble as I scrolled further. At the bottom of the folder sat a PDF contract. 7 figures. An exclusive, high-value deal with the luxury hotel chain Westshore. Signed just 2 days ago, under Brooke's name. The room tilted around me. I sank slowly onto the edge of her bed, the laptop still open on my knees. The sweet scent of vanilla from the test batch I had baked that morning still clung to my fingers and apron. It mixed with the sudden cold sweat breaking across my skin. My heart hammered so violently I could feel it in my throat, in my ears, drowning out the sound of the waves outside. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. My own sister, the person who had grown up beside me, who knew every late night I spent perfecting these recipes, who had watched me sacrifice weekends, relationships, and sleep, had taken my life's work and sold it as her own. Tears burned hot behind my eyes, but they refused to fall. Instead, a heavy, suffocating weight settled in my chest. Memories flashed unbidden. Brooke smiling proudly when I first won a local baking award, her voice saying, "I'm so happy for you, Avenue." How many times had I believed that smile was real? Now I understood it had never been. I sat there frozen, staring at the glowing screen until the words blurred. The USB felt like a knife still warm from the wound. My mind raced with questions I wasn't ready to answer. How long had she been planning this? How many times had she copied my files while I trusted her enough to leave my laptop open in this very room? The betrayal cut deeper than any rejection or failure I had ever known. Because it came from blood. From the one person who was supposed to protect my dreams, not destroy them. In that quiet bedroom filled with the ghost of childhood laughter and the distant crash of waves, something inside me cracked wide open. Would I stay silent and let this betrayal bury me? Or would I find the strength to rise from it and become someone she could never break again? Because this story is not simply about recipes being stolen. It's about what happens when the person closest to you tries to erase everything you've worked for, and how one young woman decided that her dream was worth fighting for, even if the fight began with the deepest wound of her life. The drive home from our family house felt endless. Every mile blurred behind a haze of salt air and unshed tears. By the time I pulled into Brooke's driveway that same evening, my hands were still shaking. I didn't knock. I walked straight into the living room where she sat scrolling through her phone, legs tucked beneath her on the couch like nothing in the world had changed. "Brooke." My voice came out quieter than I expected. She looked up, and for a split second I saw something flicker across her face, surprise, maybe even a trace of guilt. Then it was gone. I held up the USB between us like evidence in a crime scene. You took my recipes. All of them. You changed the names, tweaked them just enough, and sold them to Westshore as your own. Brooke didn't flinch. She set her phone down slowly, tilted her head, and gave me a small, pitying smile. Oh, Avery, you're always so dramatic. You're so talented. What do you need to share for? I was just helping the family. That contract is going to take care of Mom, of all of us. Don't you want that? Her words landed like ice water down my spine. Helping the family, as if stealing 3 years of my sleepless nights, my failures, my tiny triumphs in that tiny kitchen was some noble sacrifice. I felt my throat tighten. Memories rushed in nights. When I was 18, and Brooke would sneak into my room to taste my first experiments, telling me how proud she was, how I had believed her. You didn't help, I whispered. You stole from me. Brooke let out a soft laugh, the kind that used to make me feel safe but now sounded sharp and foreign. Stole? They're just recipes, Avenue flour and sugar, grow up. Before I could answer, the front door opened and Mom walked in carrying groceries. She took one look at my face, then at Brooke, and her shoulders dropped with that familiar tired sigh. What's going on now? I turned to her, voice cracking despite how hard I tried to hold it together. Mom, Brooke took my recipes. She signed a huge contract with Westshore using my work. I lost everything. Mom set the bags down carefully. She looked between us for a long moment, then walked over and placed a gentle hand on my arm. Avery, honey, don't make this bigger than it needs to be. Family is more important than a few sweet recipes. Brooke is trying to do something good for all of us. You're young. You can create more. Her words crushed something deep inside my chest. A few sweet recipes. That was all my passion, my identity, my years of quiet struggle amounted to in her eyes. I stood there between the two of them, the sister who had betrayed me, and the mother who chose to look away, feeling smaller than I had in my entire life. The injustice burned hot behind my ribs, but I couldn't find the words to fight back. Not yet. In the days that followed, everything unraveled quietly. The Westshore contract went through under Brooke's name. Whispers started spreading in the local food community. Avery's recipes got leaked. Maybe she wasn't as original as everyone thought. My phone stopped ringing with new orders. My small pop-up events began canceling one by one. I stopped going out. I locked myself inside my tiny rented kitchen behind the old bait shop. From sunrise until long after dark, I worked, kneading dough until my shoulders screamed, measuring ingredients with hands that still trembled with rage and grief, baking batch after batch just to stay afloat, just to prove I could still breathe. Every night I fell into bed exhausted, but sleep brought no peace. Only dreams of Brooke's smile and Mom's disappointed sigh. Anger simmered, low and constant. Pain followed like a shadow. Loneliness pressed down so heavy some mornings I could barely get out of bed. Yet in that suffocating darkness, 2 people refused to let me disappear. Uncle Marcus, the retired baker who had taught me everything when I was just a scared teenager, started showing up unannounced. He never said much. He simply rolled up his sleeves, stood beside me at the counter, and worked in silence. His steady hands and quiet presence reminded me I wasn't completely alone. And Riley Santos, my loyal assistant who had been with me since the very first pop-up, stayed late every single night. He handled deliveries, answered emails, and never once asked why I looked like I was falling apart. His quiet loyalty became the only light I could count on. Still, the weight inside me grew heavier each day. I was drowning in betrayal, in self-doubt, in the terrifying thought that maybe Mom was right, maybe I was making too much of this. Maybe I wasn't good enough to protect what was mine. But somewhere beneath the exhaustion and the tears I swallowed in secret, a small, stubborn spark refused to die. I wouldn't let Brooke erase me. Not completely. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday night. I was alone in my small kitchen, kneading dough so hard my knuckles ached. Tears mixed with the flour on the counter as the weight of everything finally became too much. Brooke's smile, Mom's disappointed sigh, the silent cancellation of my orders. The way I had started doubting every recipe I had ever created. I stopped. My hands froze in the sticky dough. "No more," I whispered to the empty room. I was done letting their betrayal define me. The next morning I called Uncle Marcus first. My voice shook when I told him I needed help finding the right lawyer. He didn't ask many questions. He simply gave me the name Nathaniel Ford and said, "You're stronger than you think, Avery, don't forget that." 2 days later, I sat across from Nathaniel in his quiet office near the harbor. Sunlight filtered through the blinds as he listened to my story without interruption. When I finished, he leaned forward, his expression steady and serious. "We have a strong case," he said gently. "Digital footprints don't lie. Timestamps, file transfers, metadata. We can prove those recipes were yours long before she touched them." I left his office carrying a small notebook filled with careful instructions. My heart pounded with a mixture of terror and something new, a fragile spark of determination. But I refused to rush into a loud courtroom fight. Not yet. Instead, I chose silence as my armor and creation as my weapon. Every night after closing the kitchen door, I began again from nothing. I didn't copy my old recipes. I reached deeper, pulling flavors and textures from the pain I had carried for months. Toasted cardamom with burnt honey, dark chocolate folded with sea salt and orange zest, sourdough loaves scored with patterns that looked like rising flames. Each new creation felt like taking back a piece of my soul. When the collection was ready, I took the scariest step of all. I rented a small corner at the weekend farmers market and set up a humble pop-up stand. No flashy signs, no dramatic announcements. Just a wooden table covered with fresh linen, warm bread wrapped in brown paper, and a simple chalkboard that read, "From Ash's Bakery, baked with heart." At first, only a handful of people stopped by. Then something shifted. A young woman tasted my new blood orange brioche and asked why I named the bakery From Ashes. I hesitated, my hands trembling slightly on the counter. Then the words came out quietly, honestly, because someone I loved tried to burn my dreams down, and I decided to rise anyway. She bought 3 loaves and came back the next week with friends. Word spread slowly at first, then faster. People began sharing short videos of my bread on their phones. In those videos, I spoke softly about baking through heartbreak, about finding strength when family hurt you the most. I didn't attack Brooke. I simply told my truth. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from strangers who said my story gave them courage to face their own betrayals. Local food writers stopped by. Orders started flowing again, not the old ones, but new ones for my fresh creations. For the first time in many long months, I felt air fill my lungs again. Uncle Marcus came every Sunday morning. He stood quietly beside me at the stand, helping wrap loaves, his weathered hands moving with the same patience he had shown when he taught me to bake years ago. His silent pride wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Riley Santos never missed a single market day. He handled the crowds, counted change, and offered small smiles when he saw me standing taller than the day before. His steady loyalty became one of the few lights I could count on in the darkness. Yet even as my new bakery gained quiet momentum, I continued working in the shadows with Nathaniel. We built the copyright claim carefully, piece by piece. Every email, every file transfer, every digital signature was documented. The folder on my laptop grew thicker each week, a silent weapon waiting for the right moment. Some nights fear still visited me. I would wake up sweating, wondering if I was making everything worse. What if fighting back destroyed what little family I had left? What if I wasn't strong enough? What if Mom had been right all along that I was being too dramatic? But then I would walk into my kitchen at dawn, shape a new loaf with steady hands, and remember how it felt to create something that was truly mine again. I was no longer the broken girl crying over stolen recipes. I was becoming the woman who refused to disappear. I was taking back my voice, my craft, and my future one carefully crafted pastry at a time. and though the road ahead still frightened me, I could finally feel it. The power was returning to my own hands. The real battle was still coming, but this time, I would face it standing tall. The call came on a crisp Monday morning, just as I was pulling the first loaves from the oven. It was Nathaniel Ford. His voice was calm, but I could hear the edge beneath it. Westshore just discovered the duplication. They've suspended the entire contract with Brooke. They're investigating now. I stood frozen in my small kitchen, flour still dusting my arms, the warm scent of fresh bread suddenly feeling too heavy in the air. For a moment, the world narrowed to the sound of my own heartbeat. It was happening. The quiet storm I had been preparing for months was finally breaking. That same week, I posted one final video. No dramatic music, no angry words, just me, sitting at the wooden table of my pop-up stand with the ocean behind me, speaking softly into the camera. I told the truth. I spoke about the recipes I had created with love and sleepless nights. About waking up one day to find them taken by the person I trusted most. About choosing to create something new from the ashes instead of letting the pain destroy me. The video spread faster than anything I had ever posted. 1 million views in 48 hours. Then 2 million. Then 3. Messages flooded in from bakers, chefs, and ordinary people who had been hurt by someone they loved. The community I had quietly built around From Ashes Bakery suddenly stood behind me like a wave. Brooke's world began to crumble. I heard it first from Riley, then from Uncle Marcus. Brooke had called them both in panic, demanding they speak to me, begging them to convince me to drop everything. She even showed up at Mom's house one evening, voice cracking as she pleaded with Diane to make me stop. "Mom, please. Tell Avery this is destroying our family. It was just bread. She's ruining everything." I wasn't there, but I could imagine Mom's face torn between her two daughters, still trying to smooth things over with gentle words that no longer worked. I refused every private offer that came through lawyers. No secret settlements, no quiet agreements to make it all disappear. I had spent too many nights crying in my kitchen to turn back now. The copyright claim moved forward. On the morning of the hearing, the courtroom felt smaller than I expected. Sunlight slanted through high windows onto polished wood. I sat beside Nathaniel, my hands folded tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. Across the room, Brooke sat with her own lawyer, her usual confidence replaced by tight lips and restless fingers. Uncle Marcus took the stand first. He spoke slowly, his weathered voice steady as he described the years he had spent teaching me in his old bakery. How he had watched me experiment late into the night, fail, and try again until every recipe carried my own signature. He didn't look at Brooke. He only looked at me, his eyes full of quiet pride. Then Riley Santos stepped forward. He hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable, but his voice grew stronger as he spoke. Brooke approached me twice. She offered me money to bring her more of Avery's new recipes. She said Avery would never notice, that it would help the family. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Brooke's face went pale. She stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. I watched her without anger now. Only a deep, aching sadness for the sister I had once loved so fiercely. When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly. My legs felt weak, but my voice did not. I didn't attack her. I simply told the truth about what those recipes had meant to me, the nights I had poured my heart into them, the dreams I had built around them, and the pain of discovering they had been taken without permission. The judge listened carefully. The evidence Nathaniel presented was undeniable. At the end of the hearing, the decision came swiftly. Brooke lost the Westshore contract completely. Her reputation in the local culinary world was badly damaged, and she was ordered to pay significant compensation for the theft of my intellectual property. As we walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon light, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. The heavy stone that had lived in my chest for so many months had finally begun to lift. Uncle Marcus placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Riley stood quietly beside us, offering a small, genuine smile. Brooke passed by without looking at me. Her shoulders were slumped in a way I had never seen before. In that moment, I understood a quiet truth. Justice doesn't always arrive with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it comes slowly, built day by day through patience, honesty, and the courage to keep creating, even when your heart is broken. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's becoming someone they can never break again. 2 years had passed since that day in the courthouse. The morning light now filtered through large windows of my flagship bakery on the main street of our coastal town. The sign above the door read, "From Ashes," in soft, elegant lettering, a quiet reminder of where I had been and how far I had come. I stood behind the counter watching the morning rush. Fresh loaves of blood orange cardamom bread cooled on wooden racks. The scent of toasted hazelnut and warm vanilla wrapped around the room like a gentle embrace. Customers smiled as they waited, some taking photos of the golden crusts, others simply breathing in the peace that now filled this space. From Ashes had grown from a small market stand into a small chain of 3 bakeries. I had opened the doors to young artisans, giving them space to experiment and find their own voice. Every week, I still shared pieces of my story, not for pity, but to remind others that pain could become purpose. Yet some wounds never fully disappeared. Brooke had faded quietly from the spotlight. After losing the Westshore contract and facing the public consequences, her marriage had fallen apart. She now worked in a small commercial bakery on the other side of town, baking plain sandwich loaves and simple cookies under someone else's name. I heard through mutual friends that she rarely spoke about the past. When she did, her voice carried a heavy regret that I chose not to chase. I had not spoken to her in nearly 2 years. One quiet evening, Mom asked to meet me at the bakery after closing. We sat at a corner table near the window, the ocean dark and steady beyond the glass. Diane's hands trembled slightly as she stirred her tea. "I was wrong, Avery," she said softly, her voice cracking. "I thought keeping peace was more important than protecting you. I chose the easier path, and I hurt you deeply. I'm so sorry." Tears slipped down her cheeks. I felt my own eyes burn, old pain rising like a tide. Part of me wanted to reach across the table and hold her. Another part remembered every time she had told me to let it go, to not make trouble, to put family first. I took a slow breath. "I forgive you, Mom," I whispered, "but I can't forget, and I won't pretend we can go back to how things were." She nodded, accepting the gentle boundary with quiet sadness. Our relationship had changed forever, warmer than strangers, but no longer the close mother-daughter bond I once longed for. Not every wound heals completely. Some simply become scars that teach us how to protect ourselves better. The greatest healing came from the family I chose to build. Uncle Marcus had become my business partner. He now spent his mornings teaching the younger bakers his old techniques, his laughter filling the kitchen in a way that reminded me of my earliest days learning to bake. Riley Santos had stepped up as operations manager. His steady presence and quiet loyalty had turned into deep friendship and true partnership. Together, the 3 of us had created something stronger than blood, a chosen family rooted in trust and respect. On a bright spring afternoon, I stood in front of a group of 20 young, aspiring bakers in the large teaching kitchen at the back of the flagship store. Sunlight streamed across the stainless steel counters. The air smelled of fresh yeast and cinnamon. I wiped my hands on my apron and looked at their hopeful faces. 2 years ago, I began slowly, my voice calm and steady, someone I loved tried to take everything I had worked for. She stole my recipes, my dreams, and for a while, she almost stole my belief in myself. I paused, letting the memory wash over me without pulling me under. There were nights I cried in my kitchen wondering if I was good enough, but I learned something important in that darkness. When someone close to you betrays you, don't let them define your worth. Use that pain as fuel. Let it push you to create something even more beautiful. And above all, never, ever lose yourself in the process. A soft silence filled the room. Several young bakers wiped their eyes. I smiled gently. You will face obstacles. Some will come from strangers. The hardest ones may come from family, but your value is not decided by their actions. It is decided by how you rise, how you create, and how you choose to keep your heart open while protecting what matters most. As the class ended and the students began shaping their own dough, I stepped back and watched them. The ocean breeze drifted through the open windows. The sound of laughter and quiet conversation filled the kitchen. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. My journey had not been easy. The betrayal still left its mark. But I had turned that deep wound into strength. I had built a life, a career, and a community not from revenge, but from resilience and love. And as I looked at the young faces focused on their work, I realized the greatest victory wasn't winning in court. It was standing here today, whole, proud, and still baking with an open heart. From ashes, something beautiful had risen, and I finally understood I was home. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. We appreciate you more than you think. If this tale stirred something deep inside, we invite you to remain part of this frontier of memories. More true stories of honor, compassion, and destiny are waiting for you here. Subscribe, share, comment, and thank you for riding with us today. Aviso Legal. Disclaimer. Our content is designed for artistic and entertainment purposes, and may reinterpret historical themes using fictional touches. We apply AI tools thoughtfully, only to support production while keeping human supervision over editing, emotional tone, and narrative coherence. We always comply with regulatory guidelines for AI-based media and avoid deepfake practices or identity manipulation. All supporting components remain legally sourced. Please ask for authorization before sharing or adapting any segment. Your respect makes it possible for us to continue telling meaningful stories.